Texas A&M is a very interesting team this year, Mason. Obviously, a new head coach after Jimbo Fisher is shit canned, and it was obviously for the best. This team, Texas A&M, over the last few years has not had issues recruiting. That really has not been the issue. It's been on field coaching that has really left something to be desired. And the Aggies ended up 5-7 last year. They're sitting at the number 2 in the transfer portal class for this past year. Brought in a ton of guys and had a ton of guys leave. The best way I could figure out to describe this roster at this moment is lots of questions and lots of possible answers. Okay, but we have to give these guys an opportunity to answer some of these questions. One thing that I feel pretty confident about is Connor Wegman's ability to run this offense. I like Connor Wegman. I like the tools in his tool bag. I think this kid has got what it takes. He's on the short list for the Heisman Trophy this year. And I think that he's got a really good I think he's got a really good shot. I really, really do. Just some questions for this team that I think are going to have to be answered. Running back, Reuben Owens. He's got to step up this year. Colin Klein has to have a good running game to be productive in his offense. I think we all saw that the last couple of years whenever he had Deuce Vaughn and then whenever he didn't, the difference in that offense. And obviously your offense is never going to be as good whenever you lose an NFL player. But in this situation, starting over with a fresh slate, installing a new offense at a new school, I think that you're going to need a good running back to be able to lean on. I think Reuben Owens has a chance to do that. There's kind of some complaints about his ability to pick up the pass protection, something that he's going to have to work on here in the spring. Defensive line, the interior defensive line, to be exact, is a big question after outgoing transfers. So who's going to step up there? Who's going to step up at wide receiver? Who just pulled in freshman Terry Bussey. And then I really like this guy, Cyrus Allen, that they got out of the transfer portal. He was a wide receiver from Louisiana Tech, had a great year last year, comes over, not a guy that a lot of people are talking about. Look for Cyrus Allen to be a surprise wide receiver in the SEC this season. And I feel really good about this team as secondary and linebacker. Bring back Chase Bisontis on that offensive line, was a highly coveted guy, was in the transfer portal, got him to change his mind and stay at Texas A&M, and I think that was a big deal. So with all that being said, I don't think we have a ton of clarity with this Texas A&M team right now. Obviously, tons of moving pieces. Got a lot of stuff to figure out in the spring. I think this team is going to improve on their 5-7 record. We're going to go through the schedule here in just a second. The over-under is set at 8.5. So for a team that won 5 games last year, over-under at 8.5 is pretty solid. Do you want to take us through the schedule and kind of give us your thoughts on the Aggies and where we go from here?
Yeah, you look at an 8.5 over-under for this team with a brand new coach who, this team won 6 games last year, if I'm not mistaken.
I thought it was 5,
or maybe even 5. Yeah, because I don't think they went to a bowl game, right? So
no.
So 5 games last year and have really been on a downward trajectory for a while. And it's interesting, but it does make sense from a betting perspective because Mike Elko has a short history as a head coach, but a good history as a head coach. Good record at Duke. Took half the roster, if that, of what he has from a talent perspective of what he has at Texas A&M with what he had at Duke, and was actually pretty positive, right? Was a pretty good program. And then what's interesting about this is, he's walking into a good situation. He's probably going to make this team better. And lo and behold, week 1, he's going to go face his old quarterback, right? And so week 1, he's going to have kind of the upper hand here, I would think, knowing exactly, what his old quarterback used to do for Duke, right? Um, and I'm blanking on the guy's name right now. Help me out here, Mark.
Who's that?
They're Notre Dame's new quarterback, Riley Leonard. Thank you. All right, so
Yeah, yeah.
I was just looking it up as I was talking there, but so Riley Leonard is known as a quarterback that has some flaws, right? Not a great passer, excellent on the ground, good leadership, and he seems to make a difference in his team when he's actually playing. Um, Mike Elko knows all of his attributes. Guy played for him for 2 years. He kind of helped build Riley Leonard in a lot of ways, and so I think people are going to look at this and say, "Man, Notre Dame better win this," and all the pressure's on Notre Dame. I feel like Texas A&M has, I mean, not more pressure on them. I do agree that Notre Dame has more pressure to win that game, but I think that Texas A&M, in
Hey, I think you
in
you
my eyes, Texas A&M is going to be the team that you need to beat. Excuse me, Texas A&M is going to be the team that should be picked to win this game against Notre Dame. So to me, that's a really interesting game right there to kick the season off. How many times do we see this though? It's like college football just understands its own drama in some ways, and we get these matchups, and it tends to be in week one for some reason. But I'm really excited about that game. That's a really interesting game to circle for week one for all of college football, but also for Texas A&M and for Notre Dame for multiple reasons. Then you keep on going through the schedule. I think that they'll win the next 3 games. They should win against Arkansas. Not saying that they can't drop one of those, right? But I think that they have a legitimate shot to go 5-0 to start the season. I'm not completely confident that Missouri can replicate what they did last year. So while I think on paper they're probably still a better team than Texas A&M, this is also going to be a home game for Texas A&M. It's going to be a ruckus environment for Missouri to step into, and I think it's a kind of prove it game for Missouri. Maybe they catch them on their heels, right? Maybe they're able to win that game. So potentially, right? I'm not predicting that they're going to be 6-0 at this point, but 6-0 potentially, 7-0 with Mississippi State, and then you got LSU, right? What are we going to get out of LSU's defense? We don't know. We know that they lost a couple of key wide receiver targets and also a Heisman winning quarterback on the offensive side of the football, as well as a really good offensive coordinator. I do think that they take a step back on offense. They're not going to be bad. I'm not saying that. I think Nussmeier is a great quarterback, and I think he's going to do really well. They still have Lacey. I think he's going to do really well, and they recruit that position very well. So that's to me. I think some people would think that LSU should be picked to win that game, and they probably will. But I don't think the margin's going to be that great, especially at that point in the season. If Texas A&M does kind of what I'm saying that they could potentially do, and if they're even 5-2 at this point, that's going to be less than a 10-point spread for that game. So I'm going to say that's maybe like a 40% chance of winning for Texas A&M. South Carolina should be a win. Auburn should be a win. I think that could be more competitive than most. And my point is, you get to Texas and you're at home. You're at Kyle Field for this game. It's a rivalry game. You got the horses to win this game. You got the dudes to win. They shouldn't win. I think Texas will be favored in this game, but they got the dudes to go out and win this game. And there's a real chance. I think there's a real opportunity here. In the beginning of March, we can speculate and say that Texas A&M has a real opportunity to not only make it to the playoffs and end up being like a 10-2 SEC team, they have a chance to play for the SEC championship next year in year one under Mike Elko. Of course, that would be amazing. But I think that given his pedigree and what he's been able to do at lesser schools with lesser talent, this should be an easy coaching. Like this should be an easy team for him to coach. It's a tough schedule for him to coach as well. If that makes any sense, I feel like he's going to go in and realize he's got some real pieces to work with, but he's also going to be competing against some of the best in the country. This schedule is favorable. Am I just drawing too much out of this, Mark, or do you see where I'm going with this? Where like this could legitimately be a 10-win team, pretty easily, right? Am I crazy for saying that?
At 8.5, I'm feeling right now the play would definitely be over. And part of the reason I feel that way is because of the way the home versus the away slate sets up. You've got that Arkansas game that's a neutral site, but if you look at this, you got 3 out of your 4 home games in September. 3 out of your 4 games in September are at home. Okay, and then you got the neutral site with Arkansas there in September, and then you got a couple of more home games there with Missouri and LSU, and then you finish the season up at home versus Texas. I think all of their really tough games come at home, and I think that makes a big difference. The 12th man is an extremely raucous environment. There's no doubt about that, and I think that if we're saying that Texas A&M could more than likely finish with 9 wins, that crowd's going to be into it into the very last game of the year, man. So yeah, I think this sets up really well. Notre Dame that first week, I think you're going to be catching Notre Dame not knowing their identity. They're still trying to figure out how they're going to do anything in the passing game. All new wide receiver room, new quarterback. And Notre Dame also, not to mention, has lost a good bit of linemen. It was a great offensive line last year, kind of went under the radar. A lot of those guys are gone too. So Texas A&M, I think, has got a really good opportunity. I like this secondary a lot. Bring in Des Ricks over from Alabama. I think that's a nice piece to bring in. Bring in Scooby Williams at linebacker from Florida. I thought he was an outstanding linebacker on a Florida team that just absolutely sucked. So I think you bring in some really good players. Take a look back last year at what Duke did. Talk about doing more with less. Now, Duke, I think, had a lot better defensive line than what we're going to see at Texas A&M. I think it'll be a little bit different defense, but if you'll remember, that Duke secondary was really, really good last year. Really tough to throw on, and I think you're going to see more of that. It's no secret. Mike Elko is a defensive-minded head coach, and in my opinion, I think that's the best frame of mind to have as a head coach. And I think he's going to pick up a lot of those personality characteristics that we saw at Duke as a coach. If I'm mashing the over/under, I'm taking over right now on the Texas A&M Aggies. I think 9 is a very, very strong possibility. What you with me on that?
Yeah, 100%. If my breakdown wasn't clear enough, I would almost take over 9. I think 9.5 would be a stretch, but if I could get really good plus money on a over 9, I'd like those odds. And at least push. But I'm pretty confident that they can get to 9 wins next year.